welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today in the show, we have Wendy Schofer. She is a pediatrician and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Why We Should Celebrate the Great Resignation. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Oh, it is such a wonderful opportunity to be here and to get to connect with you in person. It's such a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Now, we'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you just share your story and journey to where you are today?
Wow. Yeah. I always kind of question where I'm supposed to start with everything, where is that story? But really, I'm a pediatrician. I'm a lifestyle physician. I'm a certified life and health coach for parents. And really the first 15 years of my career were spent thinking that I wasn't cut out for clinical medicine. I had experienced burnout several times, and quite honestly, I didn't have the words for it then. I just thought that it meant that I wasn't meant to work full time, that I, didn't have the focus, that I didn't have the energy to do it. And so I kind of wandered a lot. I transitioned to part-time medicine. I did a lot of community work, and eventually it just kind of got me to this place where I started recognizing that it wasn't me. It wasn't that I had, challenges. It was more of the question of what is it that I actually want to do with my training, with my passions, and not trying to fit in someone else's mold. And so that's where this journey has kind of taken this beautiful path for me to be able to start doing things that really bring me joy.
So you mentioned that you're a lifestyle physician. You're also a coach to parents as well as a practicing pediatrician. Tell me about that intersection and how you manage all these avenues of your professional life into who you are.
I don't think it's so much of like managing all the different aspects. It's just kind of like, like if you're an athlete and a parent and a race car enthusiast and a dog parent too, like it's just all these things that kind of come together. And so for me, it's all just part of the it's kind of like part of this big beautiful composition, this big picture for me. I dove into lifestyle medicine several years ago when I was actually doing research as a part of that nonprofit work. I was trying to look up programs for pediatric diabetes prevention. And I just discovered lifestyle medicine as a concept. And I said, this is a thing. This is what I do every day. This is what I practice. And so I moved towards that because I wanted to collaborate with like-minded people that were looking outside of the medical office. How can we integrate with what's going on in the home as far as nutrition and movement and sleep? And so it's a part of me. And those labels, I'm this type of physician, this type of coach. It's just trying to describe to other people what it is that I'm putting out into the world and how it's just me.
So one of the things that we were talking about offline, you had mentioned how much you loved clinical medicine, and not every physician loves what they're doing in medicine. And on this blog, on my podcast, we talk about things like physician burnout a lot. And so I always like to focus on physicians who love what they're doing. Now, walk us through a typical day. You can choose any day that you like that really encapsulates and illustrates that joy of medicine that you describe.
My heart is so full just thinking about that. So I'm a pediatrician. I can't think of doing any other type of medicine. Like it's just so much fun for me. And so walking through that day, every day is different. Every day is different. So I really enjoy the variety. I really enjoy connecting with patients and with their families, with their parents. And it's that connection in the office. That's what totally makes it for me. I have so much fun with my patients and with my colleagues. And that is where I've gotten myself because, in the past, I did experience burnout and I wasn't able to find that joy, find that connection I really kind of thought that I was up against the system.
Mm-hmm.
I was, fighting all of the different pressures that were being forced upon me to practice a certain way. And I learned the hard way that I need to speak to my strengths. I need to work to my strengths. And that's where I get to find the joy. And that's how I got to fall back in love with clinical medicine.
Was there a specific event or light bulb moment that you can describe that transitioned you into this joy of medicine from what you were before fighting against that?
Yeah, I'd say that it was when I started looking at how can I practice medicine on my own terms
Mm,
and recognizing that I don't have to practice someone else's medicine. I don't have to do their schedule. I don't have to do it their way. Ultimately, when I started practicing my way, that's totally when I found the love. So the practice that I like, working to my strengths. And I keep on saying that, but it's something where like I work in pediatric urgent care now.
hmm
And so there are lots of things that I'm like, I'm still not so good at that. I'm not so good at that. But you know what? I have colleagues who are amazing at it. And so I've learned that we work really well as a team. And I can either focus on what it is that I don't like and try to make myself better with that, or I can say, hey, you guys take this. And I'm totally going to focus on the things that I excel at. And it works so well. It's such a great partnership. And again, that's where I get to have the joy getting into the more complicated patients, because that's where that's my zone of genius.
Well, it's so good hearing that. I always like to hear from physicians who articulate their joy in medicine. So wonderful advice, wonderful tips. So let's transition into your Kevin MD article. It's titled Why We Should Celebrate the Great Resignation. Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read your article, can you just walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It kept on coming up, the phrase, the Great Resignation. And so I started seeing different kind of threads coming together. And it was funny that at the same time that I was submitting my own resignation from my regular contract, so I am, still on a PRN contract, but I was submitting that at the same time that my own son was resigning from his first job.
Mm-hmm.
So teenager,
Mm-hmm.
have plenty of jobs that he will go through over time.
Mm-hmm.
But it also came up in a conversation with a client of mine, and she's a teacher. And what she was really looking at was, all of the burnout and the stress that she was experiencing at work. And we started talking about, how she didn't want to run away from her job. She didn't want to just leave it because there was so much that she loved at her job.
Mm-hmm.
And we started kind of talking around what is it that she wanted to be able to move towards, what opportunities did she see, but also what is it that she wanted to take with her no matter where she went. If she stayed in her job, if she went and found another profession or another workplace. And that's where it really came from, looking at there's so many different ways that folks are transitioning right now.
Yeah.
And it's not all this resignation that we can't take it anymore, we don't want this job, we don't want this position. It's more of we are evolving, and we can, just because we're in a position right now does not mean that we need to stay there. Just because this is the outline of the job that we have right now, that does not mean that we have to conform within that space. We get to grow as humans, we get to grow as physicians. And I recognize that my son was learning all the things that he didn't like about fast food.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
he was resigning. Honestly, he was running way away from that, but he also had learned what it is that he didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
And my client was learning what it is that she did love and she wanted to take with her wherever she went. And she's still trying to figure out what she's going to be doing. And then I saw that in myself, how I was evolving too. And it wasn't that I was resigning my job because I didn't like it. I love my job,
Hmm.
but I'm evolving and I'm taking those things that I love with me wherever I go, including being a doctor. Wherever I go, I'm a doctor. I cannot divorce that. I can't get rid of that healing heart. I'm taking it with me everywhere I go.
So you talk about that evolution that sometimes is associated with the Great Resignation. So you mentioned also that as you resigned from this job, you took that part of being a doctor into who you are now. What are some other things that you took with you? What are some other strengths that you took with you as you made that evolution, as you resigned from your prior job?
So much of it is looking at the connection.
Mm.
So I am totally fueled by making connections with other people. And that isn't something that's just confined within medical office. That healing connection, I can take that wherever I go. And I'm using that now, in my business, but also just in my family, in my community. That's going with me. Other strengths, my goodness, creativity.
Mm.
Absolutely. There are many different ways to approach whatever it is I'm looking at, whether it's, a medical practice, whether it's looking at, creating health at home, whether it's looking at, improving relationships with family members, using the creativity and really tapping into that. And then again, just that love for other people. I always thought that I needed to translate that through my medical practice, that it had to look a certain way. Well, again, I'm taking that love, I'm taking my medical background, all of my years of experience, and then I'm translating that into the next chapter.
Sometimes it's not easy for physicians, especially, to take that step into the next chapter. It's very difficult, or I think more difficult compared to other professions, for a physician to move from one job to another. Now, for all these physicians who are forced into these transitions because of the Great Resignation and the pandemic, if you are coaching them, how can they see that transition more of as an opportunity rather than something negative?
I think a lot of it is looking at what is it that you're doing for yourself? Like, how do you bring joy to yourself? How do you, like, what are the values that you connect with? I bring up joy because that is one of my
Hmm.
values that I'm looking for, but that may not be your value. What are your values? And then how can you connect with that? And it may be something that you find right in the position where you are right now.
Hmm.
I'm not someone that's trying to tell everyone that we need to leave clinical medicine. No, but when we find what our values are and when we define our values and then work towards that, that's something that we can find the the passion, reignite that passion for all of our interests. I don't see a resignation as being negative.
Mm.
I think it's really recognizing where we have the opportunity to make decisions, to make choices, and to really own that, to really see, what it is that we can decide for ourselves. And just because you made a decision before doesn't mean that you can't revisit that and make a different decision now. My resignation is something that I I see that ultimately as my choice
Hmm.
for right now. It's the right choice for right now. My prior decisions, my prior resignations or jobs or whatever it was the right decision at that time.
We're talking to Wendy Schofer. She's a pediatrician, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Why We Should Celebrate the Great Resignation. What are some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
I think one of the biggest ones is that we take it with us wherever we go. You know, we are taking ourselves with us, and part of that I see is being a physician.
Hmm.
Wherever I go, I take that with me. But it's not the end of the road. It's not like I became a physician and that's it. I'm a physician and am a parent, I'm a wife, I'm an athlete, I'm, a community activist, all of this. And so it's something that I can really see becoming a physician as being a stepping stone into what else is next. What is that next chapter that I'm writing? And that for me has been liberating because I can see that I'm on this beautiful journey. And it's not that I'm trapped in this identity of being a physician. It needs to look a certain way. I need to practice a certain way. And so I share that openly with all of my colleagues. We are on this journey. It's a story that's still evolving. What's your next chapter?
Wendy, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.